Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C., and inviting you, as always, to keep up with me hour to hour on Twitter, Webster G. Tarpley, all one word, Webster G. Tarpley, at Twitter. A growing number of people interested in these very brief Twitter bulletins. The big story today, the 11th of February, 2011, a massive CIA mobilization, a massive CIA campaign has finally ousted Hosni Mubarak from power in Egypt. The CIA has finally driven Mubarak from power after more than 2 weeks of resistance and a very embarrassing series of events in the last 36 hours or so. It was an attempted coup by the CIA yesterday. Today, the U.S. has finally delivered a military coup against Obama. We have to imagine what the scene was like in the White House in Washington on the evening of February 10th, yesterday. This was, of course, the day that had started with Leon Panetta, the head of the CIA, proclaiming that there was going to be a military coup in Egypt, saying there is a strong likelihood that Mubarak will be out of power by the end of the day. That remark by Panetta, of course, is what sent the Anglo-American Wurlitzer into a frenzy of febrile activity, gloating, screaming, vociferating against Mubarak. And that then, of course, was transferred to the crowds, the gaggle of nihilists and their various dupes and associates, honest persons perhaps also caught up in the enthusiasm of the moment, right? The very heady sensation of being part of a mob, always of interest, especially to young people. The report from Panetta was that Mubarak would be gone by the end of the day. So Mubarak had gone way out on a limb, and he was joined there by Obama in Michigan. Obama then said, "One thing is certain, we are seeing history unfolding before our eyes." The usual pretentious, incompetent, blasé remark of this dilettante in the White House, this amateur and bungler of strategic matters. But it didn't happen. Mubarak went on television at 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening, U.S. time, and the word was, no, I'm not doing it. Sorry, that was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, U.S. time. Now, if you go to my website, tarpley.net, you can see two separate interviews that I did with Alex Jones yesterday. One at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, which was a brief interview that was at a time when it looked like Mubarak was going to leave power, but I carefully said this may not happen. This may be bluster and bluff coming from the U.S. And then a second interview at 3 o'clock, which starts off with the idea there may be a counter coup in process. The counter coup is what was going on, and the only reason I said this was that it was clear that there was some delay, that Mubarak was supposed to have made his television speech earlier, but he delayed it. It didn't happen, and the question was, therefore, what's going on behind the scenes? It's clear that Mubarak had strong support in the Egyptian military. And indeed, this morning, the Egyptian military forces put out a formal communique saying that they supported the idea of a Mubarak transition, that Mubarak should stay in power until his successor is elected in the presidential elections in September, and therefore he should stay. He should not be forced to resign. So up until the middle of the morning today, U.S. time, Eastern time, it looked like the military support for Mubarak was holding firm, which was a remarkable achievement all in all, given the various means of intimidation, bribery, and disorientation that the U.S. has deployed against the Egyptian army in particular. However, something happened overnight. Here's my scenario. What happened overnight? It was a big change. And it happened not so much in the councils of the military, but I think with Mubarak personally. And this is what I think is likely to have occurred. We can imagine Obama chewing the carpet in the White House, foaming at the mouth, falling down on the floor, beating his hands on the rug in the White House, and chewing the carpet in the manner of a well-known former Central European dictator who was known for chewing the carpet. And, of course, rage against Panetta, the bungler, the idiot, the ne'er-do-well, and similarly against the Director of National Intelligence, a nonentity, and so on down the line. You could see this also reflected on the television coverage. David Gergen, the Dickensian hypocrite, who obviously tries to be connected to every White House. If he can't work there, he tries to be somehow connected to them. Gergen said on CNN in the middle of the evening, "This cannot be allowed to stand. This cannot be allowed to stand." Well, of course, the issue is there U.S. imperialism dominating the Middle East, or is there not? If the U.S. cannot overthrow a country as dependent on Egypt, which has this big need for grain imports, right? The world's biggest grain importer. A lot of that comes from U.S. farms. A lot of that is financed with the now legendary $3 billion U.S. yearly aid budget. If you can't overthrow the government of Egypt when you have that kind of leverage, well then, what can you do? It would have been maybe not a total collapse, but a serious partial collapse of the U.S. imperialist position in the Middle East. So it's not just Obama's loss of face, although that played a role, but generally speaking, is there still U.S. imperialism, yes or no? Can you get anything done? Are you essentially a laughing stock in the way that Panetta had become? So what happened? Threats, blood-curdling threats, dire threats. What? I don't know. They say that Mubarak's son is in London, Gamal Mubarak in London. What could happen to him? Could he be arrested? Could he have an accident? Could he be found hanging under the Blackfriars Bridge and have that then be judged a suicide, as that was done to a fugitive Italian banker some years ago? Other people in Mubarak's family? I don't know. Mubarak had a lot of physical courage himself, but when it comes to the family, wives, children, grandchildren, and so forth, maybe that courage failed him. This is all pure speculation. And also other threats, the immediate cutoff of all food deliveries to Egypt, the descent of the country into total chaos. So it's clear that some series of threats and enticements, but I think mainly threats, to Mubarak personally and to Egypt in general, but delivered to Mubarak himself. It would be interesting to see who had contact with Mubarak overnight. Did somebody call him? Who was it? Who in the U.S. government? Was it a cutout? Was it a back-channel way of accessing him? Were the threats delivered to Ibrahim Kamal, who then had to forward them to Mubarak as part of his loyalty to his long-term friend and the president? Any of these scenarios, we'll be looking for this in the coming days. What was done overnight to completely reverse the situation so that we had, on the morning of Friday, the 11th of February, the Army statement saying, we support Mubarak's plan to stay in office until September, and then, immediately after that, an announcement is expected from the president, and then it was the vice president coming forward and saying he has quit. At this point, we assume he has quit. Actually, we don't even know that. But since this is now several hours ago, it looks like he has. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.